Welcome to Time for 14. Today we're going to tackle a more tactical subject with parenting, and we're going to talk about cars, driving, automobiles, all the fun stuff. When my teenagers became driving age, my husband and I, we had a few talks, and we had some disagreements on how to handle this. A lot of times, with parenting, we kind of reach back into our childhood, into our teenage years, and we think of how things went, and, maybe we liked it, maybe we didn't. I thought my way was pretty good. He thought his way was pretty good, and for different reasons. So when I turned 16, my older brother had been of driving age for 2 years, and he had been driving my mom's car, and he had gotten 2 tickets in my mom's car and then was no longer able to drive her car. I had seen the writing on the wall of where this was heading for myself. So at 14, I was babysitting, I was cutting the neighbor's grass, I was, doing whatever I could to save up money. I grew up out in the country, 11 minutes from the nearest town, and summers, my parents were at work, and I had no school, and I was stuck there all day long. And we lived on a dirt road that went up to like a main state road here. So I was allowed to ride my bike that way, but I wasn't supposed to go that way. I did sometimes. Shh, don't tell my mom. Okay, but it was pretty, the choices were limited. So I knew when I turned 16, I wanted to drive. So I had been saving my money, and when I turned 16, a little bit before that, I bought a car. I sometimes overestimate what I could do. And I bought a car that needed brakes, and it was brought to our house. It was my, a guy that worked with one of my parents. It was his dad's, and they brought it out, and I thought I could change the brakes, which it was just brake pads. I probably might have been able to do it. It was drums and rotors, and at 16, I was not prepared to do that. So I worked a little more. I saved a little more money. I had it towed to a shop and had paid for those to be replaced. But then I was golden. I had my car, I had my license, and then I kept a job because I needed insurance and I needed gas and the car needed maintenance. And that was okay because it was mine. Like, that's a real source of pride when it's yours. And it's even more when it's yours because you worked for it, because you maintain it. Like, it was 100% mine. There was no one else in that car. That was my car. A Dodge Lancer. Purpley raspberry. So that was my car. I was happy with the way it all went. I had no animosity towards my parents for me having to pay for my own thing. In fact, I'm not even really sure if they told me that I had to. I just saw what happened with my brother. I saw him waiting around my mom's schedule to use her car, and then I saw him getting in trouble with the car. And that was not the path that I wanted, so I made my choice there. I believe they did tell me, though, that like car insurance I would have to pay for, and obviously gas, and maybe they did. It wasn't like a sit down huge discussion. It was like, hey, if you want that, you got to pay for it, which made sense. Why wouldn't that make sense? It was my car. Why should somebody else pay for my things? It was very logical. I didn't have an argument for that. I didn't have any question about that. It made sense. That's what we did. My husband, he had to pay for his car, but his parents paid for his insurance and I think his gas. Now, he went to school as I went to school. He played sports. I played sports. And I worked to be able to afford my car. And the rule in his house was as long as he was playing a sport and keeping his grades up, he didn't have to work. So then he didn't have to pay for the insurance and the gas. And I see where his parents were coming with that. I mean, no hate on them at all. And he had different academic needs than I did. But I went to school, I worked, I played a sport, I afforded my things. And from what he's told me about his teenage years, I think he could have squeezed in some work time to be able to afford his things. I really, truly do. He won't admit that, but, you hear stories, you can put together timelines. It would have worked. Anyway, when we were talking about how to handle this with our kids, his argument was that it worked for him, and I'm sure it did. My argument was that it would make them more responsible with their things, and it would give them a greater sense of pride for the car that they have and the way they took care of it. I mean, if they get their own license and they can't afford their own car yet, or they have their car but they can't afford to put gas in it, I mean, that's all kind of a gray area that we work around, right? If they have a driver's license but they don't have a car and I want them to take my car to the store, well then, I'm not going to charge them to use my car. They're going to get groceries that we're all going to eat at the store, so no big deal there. But if they have their driver's license and they want to take my car to go on a date, they can pay the gas for that, right? So maybe another situation, right? They have their own car that they've paid for and they're paying the insurance, and I ask them to go pick up a sibling from a practice or something. I'm going to give them gas money for that. Now they're using their thing to help me out, so I'm going to compensate them for that. And there's a lot of those little things you got to navigate. Sometimes it wasn't all cash. Sometimes it was, I'll buy your McDonald's or, whatever. But the bottom line is you need to look at your teenager, what's going to work best for them, and what they can and can't keep in a day. Maybe my husband, when he was a teenager, really couldn't have handled work also. I didn't know him then. So it's a possibility. Again, from what he's told me, I think he could have, but maybe he couldn't. He did have to put in extra time at school. His sports were more like, he did basketball, so that had a lot more traveling than I think in winter. I just did the play. I didn't do a winter sport. I did a fall sport and a spring sport. So there were some differences. And that's going to be where you as a parent, you have to look at the situation, and it's going to be different with each child. Look at their situation and see what's going to work best for them. And then the important thing with that too is to have a conversation with your child on why the rules are this way. And if they're different from one child to the next, first of all, they shouldn't be too different. If somebody has to pay for their own car and insurance, they all should have to pay. And you can work around, different needs at school or extra things. There's some places where you can just work on the weekends or just, go do some physical labor we are in a rural area, but at a farm, and you probably get paid more than, walking in as a grocery bagger or something. So there's different ways around it, and there's a lot more you can do now with the internet that you couldn't do when I was a teenager. Makes me sound old, but it's true. You can sell things on eBay. Your teenager can do a lot of things. Don't let them convince you otherwise. Don't let them convince themselves otherwise. If it's something they really want, they can go after it. I really wanted a car. I really wanted to be able to drive when I turned 16. I was in the middle of nowhere. I went down and talked to the neighbors. I found things that I could do, that I could work at, even if my parents, were at work a half hour away. There's ways out there if they're driven enough. So let them be driven, inside, not a car. Because they're not going to be driven if everything is handed to them. That's kind of a big life lesson besides just a car. We'll give one more little car story to help, if you will. My first car that I worked years for and saved up for, I got hit in a parking lot. I was following the rows, where you're supposed to drive, and I saw this car coming across at a diagonal. I saw it and I didn't move. I just thought, they're going to hit me. Oh yeah, they hit me. Turned the car up on its side. I was okay. The car was not. And I only had basic coverage on the car because that was kind of all I could afford or all I wanted to afford. So then I was left carless after working for years to save enough. That was a time I got to borrow my mom's car while I looked for another one. Timing wise, my brother had went in the Navy at that time, and so then I paid him a small amount and I drove his car for a while. But it's still, all of that wasn't enough to make up for the 2 years I had saved for my first car. So I did, I was very blessed that my aunt and uncle have a car repair shop. They had a car that someone had brought in for repairs and then they couldn't pay the bill, so they handed over the title. And I was able to work there and buy that car off of them through working there and helping out, which was very good. And the point of that story is also, to give your child grace when things happen, like that happened with me, my very hard worked for car being gone. And then, yes, I was allowed to use mom's car, and I did treat it very, very well. And I never got a ticket in it. This look is for my brother. Yeah, I treated it very well. And the moral is, again, if they're really driven for something, they'll find a way. I was asking everybody, do you know of a cheap car? Do you know of a cheap car? Do you know of a cheap car? I mean, it happened to be my aunt who gave me a call and gave me a solution that would work for them too. I mean, they were a car repair place. They weren't in the business of buying and selling cars. So it worked for them. It worked for me. But it was asking, I didn't want to be without a car. I didn't want to have to wait and borrow another car. I liked having my own car and being able to do what I wanted in my own car. So the moral is, let them get a little hungry for something. And they might at first throw a fit and say, this isn't fair. No, this is life. This is preparing you for life. This is what I do as a parent because I love you. I let you see what life is like while you're safe here, and I can catch you if you fall.